Welcome, everyone, through all time and space to an all new episode of Weebs on the Weekends, a podcast where we break down the anime news highlights of the week and give a retrospective look at anime that premiered 10 years ago. Today's episode will be covering our picks for the best anime of the 2021 winter season, anime season that is, and cover the 2011 anime Gosick and if it's worthy of a resurrection or reburied. My name is Jay Johnson. I'm a part-time weeb and full-time English language sensei. And with me, as always, is my co-host Sam Martinez, part-time weeb and full-time automail mechanic. Now, Sam, I usually like to banter with you right now, but I really want to get to what won the winter anime season. But are there any news stories real quick that you think are worthy of a small banter right now?
I would have to say the one thing that came to mind was, well, I guess two things actually. One being somewhat newsworthy, another one being a follow up on an old news that we did. The follow up would be the Demon Slayer Mugen Train movie. A friend and I were trying to look for the website to where we can log on, buy our tickets, because apparently we have to go to Funimation. We couldn't buy them off of Fandango or anything else like that. And even when we went to the website, Funimation was like, "Hey, come later. Nothing's ready yet." So we're sort of like in purgatory for that. The other news, noteworthy news, would be the trailer that you sent me earlier in the week for Yasuke, the Netflix adaptation of the first Black Samurai. So it'll be interesting. I wanted to get your thoughts on it a little bit. What were your thoughts when you saw the trailer?
Yeah, so it was surprising that Netflix kind of just dropped it out of nowhere because it has a premiere date of April 29th. So that's literally
Oh.
like they dropped it on April Fools. So I don't know if that's some kind of subliminal messaging about it, but yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, so we did cover this on like a news story, news highlights. Wow, maybe 2 months ago. But it is that it's telling the story of Yasuki, the first black samurai that served under Nobunaga, and voiced by Lakeith Stansfield. So it's a pretty ballin' trailer. I mean, I shared it around with a bunch of people because, again, it's not getting enough marketing push that you would expect. Something like this is pretty high profile. Again, if you look at the full voice acting cast, but it sold me. I mean, I'm tuning in for it. It's just stacked to what you expect, like this kind of historic epic, but it's taking somewhat of a sci-fi twist to it as well. So it delivered. Sam, how about you?
I didn't. I'm glad that you mentioned that it was that he was a vassal for Oda Nobunaga, because I didn't realize like that's the time period in which this takes place, and that he was related to such a popular figurehead. I would say when I saw it, it reminded me very much of Afro Samurai, along with the music as well too. So I'm really hyped for it, and it's Studio Mappa who's doing it too. So again, it's the year of Mappa. Mappa's just throwing its skills and its schlong everywhere, saying, "I am here, bask in my glory, and bask in it we shall."
Yeah, so even if you look at yeah, I guess it is the year of Studio Map because I mean they had, of course, God of High School last year. They had Attack on Titan at the beginning of this year. They had this season for Zombieland Saga. They have Chainsaw Man coming out later this year, and then now they have this. It's very interesting. Yeah, I didn't really take account of how much Mappa has been doing and why probably their schedule was packed and all that criticism they got for wonky CGI, which wasn't even wonky that much for a couple of the episodes of Attack on Titan, is completely excusable given how small Mappa actually is and how talented their staff is. So,
Oh, Mappa's actually a small studio. I thought. Oh, I didn't realize that it was a small studio.
well, I mean, small is kind of like in
Yeah.
quotes, it's just
Well,
smaller.
relative.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, to the bigger ones. Yeah, I mean, they're relatively new as well. So, not relatively new. They're just relatively quiet. No one gave Mappa any good like notice, even when they did like Kids on the Slope, which is one of the most beautiful anime movies out there. But news stories for me, Sam, just talk about real quick is that I watched the last episode of Black Clover, and that has been one
Oh
of
yeah.
those shonens that I haven't really praised. I say like the first 100 episodes are skippable. It doesn't even get narratively interesting until like 140 episodes in, and I recommended to you like a while ago, like start with episode or season 4, and then like the best fight isn't until like episode
I'm
150.
not gonna lie. I was a little miffed. You're like, get into Black Clover, and you were like, I'm at season 4 and it's good now. And like for me, it's like I need backstory. So I didn't see the message where it's like you can skip all this. I had to go. So I went back and I did the work, and I hated every bit of it. And so that would so by the time that yes, exactly, I was just like sloughing through it, just trudging along, and by the time that I got to the fight that was interesting, I was already fed up with the show. I couldn't really enjoy it. But that's just my take on it, because some other people have really did enjoy Black Clover, and this last season, it seems like they finally were able to get a good studio to do them right in terms of the animation. But as far as the story, how did it end?
In a very satisfying way, but also that it was obviously cut short. I mean, it stopped at 170 episodes, and it was announced that it was going to stop its production like maybe last month. And I guess we covered our end of the year wrap up about why that is that its sales have dropped off significantly from last year, so it makes sense. But the news that released this week was that there is an epilogic movie coming out to finish up the story. So the anime series, did wrap up in like one of those cliffhanger endings, like the main protagonist is staring up at the sky and say, "I'm going to defeat the great evil," kind of ending, and you're like, okay, I guess I'm satisfied. It's like if One Piece just ends with, "Yeah, we're going to keep One Piecing it out there," but
Oh no. That's what happened to me and the first Inuyasha. When it ended for the first time, you had Inuyasha and the gang. They're of course, like they're still trying to get what's his name? The guy that had all the jewel shards with the poison gas,
like
Naraku.
Nakura or
Yeah.
something.
So like the thing is, he was the big bad, and essentially at the end of the show, they're just like, we'll do all that we can so that we can beat up Naraku and take back all the jewel shards, and it was so unsatisfying because, like, in my point, it's like we are nowhere near that end right now. What was the point of the story? We're basically back at the beginning of the show. You just have cooler stuff to do with your sword now. That's it. And I was very, very frustrated. Inuyasha did me wrong. I was hurt pretty bad by it. That's a rant for another time.
Yeah, for sure. And then they finished up the series properly with like the final cut, but that was like half a decade later. But yeah, I'm actually looking forward to the Black Clover movie because if they take it in the way that Ufotable took the Demon Slayer movie, like taking the studio that did the series proper and then animating it for it, I'm looking forward to it, especially with everything that was building up to it. Like the last arc of Black Clover was actually great, and I'm actually going to go back and watch it. So that's our little rant, our 10-minute little rant about news this week. But yeah, Sam, let's get into the main bulk of the episode where we're talking about the winners of the 2021 winter season. So, as always, the time codes are going to be in the description. And our system, as always, is going to be a yeet, where if we exchange our lists, where my, yes, a yeet, where it's higher up on one of our lists when from the other one, a bench, where it's not on the other person's list. So, if I have a 5, that's not on your list, it's a bench, and then a Kobe, meaning it's in the same spot. Our 5 and 5 are the same. So, Sam, starting out with you, what was your? Oh no, actually, I want to brag real quick about how much anime I watched. I want to be one of those weeks. But Yeah, like the winter season was just packed to pack with anime that
So much anime.
yeah. So actually looked at my anime list. So 27 anime piqued my interest. I watched 19 episode ones, so like 19 series of episode ones. I gave the 3 episode test to 12 anime, and then I watched in completion to 7 of them. So like this is actually the last week of the winter season by the time we're recording, as well as the first true, honest start of the spring 2021 season. So, yeah, bragging about how much anime I watched this year. It's just so much. It's
Yes.
so much. And even with the 27,
Push-up glasses.
yes, I will. And they will glare properly. But yeah, Sam, what is your number 5? What made your top 5 for the season?
My number 5, it was hard because, as you said, there was just so much anime, and a lot of it was good. However, to start off, my number 5 would be Kimono Eg.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that is a bench for me. And I do want to talk about our honorable mentions next after we do our top 5. But, tell me why this major top 5.
So the premise of Kimono Eg was essentially you follow this kid. He is half kimono and half human, and kimonos is the catch-all term for demons or supernatural beings in this world. And in Japan, he is essentially uh, invited by this tanuki uh, detective person to help find his parents because he doesn't know who his parents are, and essentially he works for the Tanuki so that they he essentially does odd jobs for other kimonos to make sure that there is a good human kimono relation in Tokyo, which it's interesting because with the power set of this little kid, he is essentially nigh immortal. So, if his head's cut off or his arms are chopped off, it will essentially grow back like Deadpool, except the part that was cut off would turn on fire, and you would essentially see it come together. So he's also insanely strong. But the thing is, like his perspective on the world is through that lens, and he was also abused when he was younger. So it's sort of this cold, detached individual, and it's interesting seeing him learn how to emote. It's also funny because he was learning the what it means to love. So when they were teaching him what love was, they were talking about romantic love, and he just thought about love in the most innocent sense. And so when they asked him, it was like if there was somebody that he had loved, he said the one person that can match that description for me would be the Tanuki dude because he took him in, gave him a roof over his head and stuff like that. And again, they were talking about romantic love, and so he did like the Tanuki did a spit take, and he's like, "Excuse me, what are you talking about?" So it's just funny seeing them seeing him learn what it means to be human overall. And it's sort of like if Vision was a kid but he wasn't hooked up to the internet, so he can't be super smart, but he is very insightful and inquisitive, and he has like this cold uh as a matter of fact attitude towards it. So that's enough about my number 5. What was your number 5, Jay?
Yeah, so that made my bench, but I did actually watch episode 1. It just didn't catch my attention strong enough against my
Yes.
other anime that I was a little bit more interested in. But my number 5 is Wonder Egg Priority.
Oh, that is a yeet for me.
Oh, wow. Okay, awesome. I like that, Sam. So, on to your number 4. What made your number 4 spot?
Wonder Egg Priority.
Okay. It was a short yeet. Okay, cool. So, it's higher up on your list, so you tell me about it.
I would say, like, I really like what Wonder Egg Priority does. Like, it's drawn and animated very well. Just a quick recap. The premise of the show is you follow these little girls that essentially have to protect souls of people who had killed themselves, and essentially trying to help the souls overcome their trauma that pushed them to commit suicide, as well as trying to overcome their own shortcomings in regards to suicide, because they either knew somebody that took their life or was somehow involved in somebody taking their own life. So they have to help these other they have to help these victims of suicide while sorting through their own feelings and emotions. It's at least like that's sort of my take on it. Would you agree with that synopsis, Jay?
Yeah, that's pretty close to what the series deals with without spoiling anything. But the thing that I would like kind of parallel this series to is like Paprika, a little bit of
Yes.
It Invaded, and somewhat of Coraline. I forgot which is that Studio Lenka. Yeah, but anyways, yeah, the whole children dealing with trauma, and you know how much I love dealing with children in peril, or you know the genre of children
You
in
like to
peril.
see kids get hurt.
I like to see them get emotionally traumatized, not physically hurt, because I think there was a series that we talked about recently that I don't like when children get physically hurt, but when children
In
have
this one, it's both.
right, that's true. Like Pan's Labyrinth is like one of those
Mhm.
situations of like traumatizing a kid psychologically. But yeah, this is the original series done by Cloverworks, and yeah, you said like the animation is beautiful. There's like five best girls in the series, and their like character design is just so eye catching. Like I equate it to Cloverworks did Grand Order Babylon for the Fate Stay series.
Oh, is that same? It's that same studio that did that.
Yeah,
Babylon was really good.
exactly. And
Okay,
I kind of equate that.
that's why Wonder Egg's so pretty.
Yeah, exactly. So like if you're looking for beautiful animations, like this is like top tier. And it's 12 episodes. It's psychological fantasy, so it's enjoyable to an extent. And we just talked about Onohana kind of being that hardcore tearjerker, and Onohana builds over time, I'm assuming. Again, I didn't haven't gone back to watch the rest of the episodes, but
Yeah.
yeah, Wonder Egg is just that gut punch episode after episode, and there's like these oddly human moments of like vulnerability with these characters, and you get inside their own trauma and their own psyche, and it's just so well done. I think honestly, like even though I put in the 5 spot, I would say like this has best anime potential out of the other ones that I
Really?
have on my list, honestly. So that's my number 5. Your number 4. So my number 4 is Hori Mia.
Oh, that's a bench for me.
Okay.
So, oh no, because that did come out this season. So tell us a little bit about Horimiya J and why it's above Wonder Egg.
Yeah, so I really don't enjoy romantic comedies, especially when it's in the slice of life school genre. And Horimiya just hits all the markers of how people are in real life. Because what Horimiya does, which it is funny, like when I was writing up what I was my thoughts about Horimiya, I was like, I wonder why it's called Horimiya, and then it clicked. That's the ship name between the two
Pretty
leads.
much.
Yeah, it's Hori who's the girl, and Miyamura is the guy. And I was like, oh my god, I'm a genius. But
Mind explosion.
I haven't like again, romantic comedies are, hard to find in anime. Well, good romantic comedies.
Good
Ones
rom
that I can
coms.
think
Yeah.
off the top of my head are like Toradora and My Little Monster that are just so genuine in their character. But the thing about Horimiya is that all the characters are so multidimensional. They are different people in different groups. So like we aren't the same people in all of our social groups. We aren't the same people when we present ourselves to our parents, to our best friends, to our significant others. And their relationship is so earnest in that way that they're exposing themselves very slowly through these 13 episodes that you get this really endearing sense of their falling in love, even though they technically declare each other boyfriend and girlfriend in episode 4, I believe. But to say
Yeah.
that I'm falling in love with you is kind of like the theme of the whole series. And this is a manga original. Well, it's based on the manga. It's a second adaptation. And it's just a beautiful human story. So it's a bench for you, but that's why it's my number 4 and above Wonder Egg priority, because it's fun to watch these two people fall in love while Wonder Egg is just like, oh my god, suicide! Yeah, let's watch more of this. Yeah, so Wonder Egg is kind of like the Made in Abyss. Like I enjoy, kids in danger, but it's not like I'm ever going to maybe revisit Wonder Egg. It's really hard to digest Wonder Egg. But yeah, Horimiya is my number 4 for
Mm.
that reason. So you got your number 4, you got your number 5. So we're on your number 3, Sam.
My number 3 is Skate Infinity.
Wow, oh my gosh, that is a Kobe.
What?
I know.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. All right. So tell me why Skate is number 3 for you.
I'm so glad you recommended this to me, or that you talked about this anime so like encouragingly, because I was in the camp of I'm not going to love another sports anime other than Haikyuu. So why bother? But
Is
you know,
is this even considered a sport anime? I mean, I the way that I viewed it, I think about it more as like shop talk for skaters, not necessarily about skating in particular. But what do you? I'm sorry. Keep continue with your thought. I didn't mean to
oh
cut
yeah,
you off
it's
there.
fine. Yeah, so like it's not the sports anime in the sense of it talks about it's about underground skating, so it is somewhat of a sporting event because it has like spectators and like betting and competitors. So in that sense, it's kind of a sport. So this is based around like an underground skating tournament at the end of it called S, and Reki and Lenga are like the main protagonist duo, and they have the shonen rivalry. It's not even a rivalry; it's just like a best friendship, which I think kind of rivals the Gon and Killua kind of dynamic that is just so endearing, and like you see that they are good for each other, and not to talk too much about their relationship because people will say, "Oh, why don't you just ship them? They're romantically interested in each other," and I'm like, I don't know if you're watching the same anime I'm watching, but so like I would equate this to like Initial D, and like drifting is like kind of the same
Oh
way,
yeah.
but it's a sport where people get hurt. Like Reki gets like hurt numerous times during this run, and like he's bleeding in one episode. You have a great villain that's multidimensional. You have a great supporting cast. There's like on point humor that comes from their characters. There's just like everything that hits home with like this a 13 or 12 episode series just hits home for the comedy, the sports aspect. It's by Studio Bones, it's original property. So tick 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 is just everything that you want out of a series. So Sam, why is it your number 3 as well?
I would have to say it's above Wonder Egg and Kimono. It mainly because it's a little bit more digestible, and not only that, but it's genuine fun because it talks about skating and it really does convey the fact that these characters they skate because it's fun and it's very very feel good. You see in Longa uh, how he is introduced to skating. He used to snowboard, and seeing him transition to a skateboarder and him still at least like trying to figure out like why he likes skating so much, and then he realizes why he likes snowboarding so much, and it's sort of like seeing his growth in that aspect, and as well as seeing the characters having to overcome their own insecurities. For instance, one of the duo is just better than the other one. And earlier on in the show, there was a statement saying, that they were going to be friends no matter what happens. If one of them does become better than the other, they're still going to be there. But then we start seeing the rubber meets the road because there is a huge disparity in their skills. So you get to see their friendship actually get tested on whether or not one of them can continue to keep up and essentially find the reason why they skated to begin with and sort of rekindle that friendship again. So, whereas, as we said, with Wonder Egg, it was a bit more cerebral and in dealing with trauma. And it's just that with Skate, it's more or less working out your trauma through your hobbies, which is very good. And I also appreciate how they talk about the sports as well, because I'm not that familiar with skating. So it was interesting to me seeing how they did that. So that's my thoughts on Skate, Jay. So what's your number two?
Oh no, we go to your number two since it was our shared three. Yeah.
My number two is I'm a spider, so what?
Okay, awesome. So really interesting. So we're going to talk about my number two in a little bit, but that's a bench for me. So tell me why Spider is your number two.
So Spider is the premise is essentially uh, a person is isekai to another world. She wakes up as a spider monster and is essentially learning the ropes of the world in terms of the magic system, things like that, what she can and cannot do. It As the series goes on, you realize that her and her entire class was isekai'd to this world too. So her classmates recognize each other and essentially has this sort of pact to find all of the other people who are isekai'd in this world. So essentially, while you're watching the show, we hop back and forth between the spider and the dungeon and her friends that are essentially in the magic school equivalent of this world. And then you begin to learn that one's continuity may not necessarily be in the same timeline as the other. So it's a really good twist on that aspect. I would also say that it is very, very entertaining seeing the main character, the spider, seeing how she reacts to the other monsters and how she essentially pulls herself from her bootstraps so that she is not dying every episode. And it's done so in a fantastically humorous fashion. So I just really enjoy it. What about you, Jay? What's your number two?
All right. So because I know your number one is my number one, probably. So I know my number two is a bench for you, but it's that time I got reincarnated as a slime. So our number twos are both
Oh,
isekais.
that was yes.
So you're a spider, I'm a slime. But yeah, this is a season two of a series that I just call comfort food. And the reason why it's so high up on my list, because I watched episode 10 3 times. Yeah, just when Rimuru goes badass is just a sight to see, because I think it was a criticism of yours for the season one. You just felt like it was so lighthearted and it didn't seem like to have any consequence to its OB character. It didn't seem to have a giant arcing narrative going for it. But in season
Mhm.
two, you just get hit over the head with it. So it's one of those seasons where you have to watch to make sense of the continuity of the story. And I guess that's what makes season by seasonal anime excellent, because season two just delivers. It's 12 episodes. It's completely enjoyable in its fantasy aspects and its comedy and its comfort food. And the only other isekai that I really feel the same way about is Log Horizon. Number one, Sam, do you want to say what our shared number one is?
I think I just have the shortened version. I don't remember the full version, but for me, I have jobless reincarnation.
Oh, okay, never mind. Bench.
Oh no! Okay, what was your number one?
Attack on Titan.
Ah, damn. Okay, that's why. Because I wasn't I was putting on first season animes on my list.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
That's why it's a little bit different.
Oh, okay, cool.
But
So tell me about, yeah, Jobless in the reincarnation then.
premise, another isekai. This man, and I would say you were the one that put me on to this one, Jay. So that's why. And I'm glad that you did, because essentially this, I think he was 25, 34. This older gentleman, essentially this neat, he is kicked out of his apartment. He ends up meeting Truck Kun and gets isekai to another world. The thing is with this one, he's literally reborn as a baby, but he has all of his faculties of his adult mind. You get to see him essentially grow this new world. And one thing that you had mentioned earlier that this show does very, very well was when the guy goes, when he is isekai, he essentially brings all of his own issues and traumas with him. For instance, because he's in an extreme need and a shut-in, he hates going outside, having to leave his home. And we see how he was still struggling to with this issue when he's maybe like 7 or something like that, and his parents were pushing him to leave the house to go into the market or something like that. So seeing him overcome those obstacles in a natural progression, as well as him working on the magic within the world, it's earned, it's not given, because he has to study. And he also makes most use of his time too, because he knows how young he is. He knows how much information he will retain. So he essentially just studies as much as he can so that he can receive dividends later on. It just feels like a progenitor of a lot of isekai tropes that we see, because of how well and how thought out it portrays everything about what it means to be isekai. So that's why Jobless is ahead of all my other first season spots here.
It is. So it's just funny. It was funny. Like obviously
Yes.
there's going to be Attack on Titan, but yes. So it is the final season of Attack on Titan. It is 16 episodes right now, which that was the other news story that kind of got the highlight of the week. That the
Yes.
second course is set for winter 2022. Already looking to a year in advance for new anime. Cool. But yeah, this is one of the Studio Mappa properties that came out this year. It is a fantasy military drama. I mean, what can be said about Attack on Titan, but it is a masterpiece, and I rarely use that, term ever, because, every series has a flaw, it has something that's not enjoyable about it. But I mean, I talked about how I'm averse to gore and violence, and even like the first episode of Attack on Titan took me maybe a couple of years to rewatch and start the season to finish season 1, and then it took me until season 3 came out, or season 4, this final season, to watch 2 and 3. So it's all relatively new in my mind about what's the strength of the series. And for the turn that the main protagonist, Aaron Yeager, takes, it's just so masterfully done. It's really one of those cases of like Aaron Yeager is like one of the best anime protagonists, and you can make a case for it. I'll. This is one of those weeb opinions of yes, I will die on this hill that he's one of the greatest of all time. But yeah, it's
Aaron's the best, and you should recognize him.
yeah, and the only other series I can really compare this to with the Titans and how it implements that kind of level of gore and innovation and the idea of like a culture kind of set in the past is Kabanari of the Hidden Fortress. So I've been like doing that with
Yes.
these anime and looking.
Attack on Trains.
Yeah, I think yeah, that was kind of like that was the nomenclature of it when it was premiering. It was like, oh yeah, this is just Attack on Titan, but there's a train. Um, But yeah, it's the thing. I guess the why I made my number one is that it is surprising how surprised you can still be with certain anime, and that the twists that the story takes. So like season one was a horror, season two was like an action adventure. Or no, sorry, season two was more of a mystery, and then season three was action adventure, and then this is just psychological thriller that the development, the characterization of Aaron Yeager, and spoiler alerts to say that he becomes essentially a great hero, and the things that he's committing are essentially,
War crimes.
yeah, war
Yeah.
crimes. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And again, Mappa's doing their best. It's high up there in animation budgets and Sakuga shots. So everything that I want to see in a good anime, just Attack on Titan had this season. So I think it's a winner. And if it doesn't win Anime of the Year, I'm going to be really disappointed in the Crunchyroll Awards. But can you run us through your top five as a wrap up?
All right. Here's a top five for my top five pick. Again, this was done with the first season in mind. Otherwise, my list would have looked a lot like yours, Jay. So I have Kimono Eg for number five, Wonder Egg Priority number four, Skate Infinity number three. So I'm a spider. So what at number two, and Jobless Reincarnation at number one.
Sweet. My number five to one, Wonder Egg Priority, Horimiya, Skate the Infinity, The Time I Was Reincarnated as a Slime, season two, and Attack on Titan, the final season. So just honorable mentions because these are going to be overlooked because they were hot guys doing sports animes this season. There was the volleyball one, which again, I'm not going to say the name of because it's ridiculously stupid, but there was also a surfboard surfing anime this season, as well as a figure skating anime. So the surfing was called Wave Let's Go Surfing, and the figure skating one was called Skate Leading Stars. I gave the first episode watch to both of them. They are surprisingly sound. It's just like you can only watch so much anime in the day when you're a teacher, so I should probably not do that.
True.
Bottom tier, bottom tier character Tamazuki, which was the other competing rom com of the season, and also deserves got the 3 episode pass. So to come back to that, laid back or Yuru Camp or laid back camp season two got the 3 episode pass as well. ReZero season two, I'm sure would have made your list if you were doing other seasons. Jobless
Yes.
Reincarnation, I have to come back to that because it looks like David Production did it with they how much gorgeous design there is to like their water physics, but it's actually a whole newly created studio just for this one anime, which seems to be getting several seasons after this one, as well as Dr. Stone season two. There was also the movies didn't make, we're not doing movies on our list, but Evangelion had its last movie, Thrice Upon Time, and Gautama had its final movie as well. So, you have any honorable mention, Sams, before we move on?
You pretty much hit them all on the head. I had forgotten about Ray Zero and I watched it religiously. It was just, just how many anime that was like this past season, dude. It was it, it was intense trying to keep up with all that anime.
Yeah, it hurts. So, Sam, we have a 10-year, 3 episode test to give to Go Sick. And this was your pick. So, my pick last week was Onahana. Your pick was Go Sick. And can you tell me a little bit about this? Because I have so much to say about it.
Will do, will do. So essentially, Gothic is derived from the Japanese word for Gothic, so that you can have an understanding of what the themes of the show is trying to imply. We follow the main character Kazuya Kujo. He's a foreign exchange student at St. Marguerite Academy. It's a luxurious school in southern Europe, the country of Saval. Written again, he is from Japan, and because of his hair, his demeanor, and his eyes, he is given the nickname the Black Reaper, based on a popular urban legend there at the school. He ends up going to the library so that he can research why he's called the Black Reaper, essentially find out a little bit more about the lore of the school so that he can make new friends. And he runs into this girl that he akins to a doll on first meeting her, her name being Victor Victorique de Blas, some French name, and they end up becoming sort of an odd couple friendship, in the sense of her eccentricities and eccentricities, along with him wanting to make new friends. And they go on adventures just because her half brother is a police inspector, and he often comes to her for her insight in regards to these mysteries. So it's sort of like a Sherlock Holmes in boarding school type setup. The show was created by Studio Bones, which has done works like Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, My Hero Academia, Soul Eater, Mob Psycho, Bungo Stray Dogs. The series is rated R for violence as well as profanity, and the genre is mystery, historical drama, and romance. And Gosick can be found streaming on Funimations as well as Amazon. So prior to us having to watch the 3 episodes, Jay, were you exposed to this anime in any way, shape, or form before our revisiting it? Or have you heard about this anime before now?
Not at all, and there is a good reason for that. But uh, yeah, not to say anything too negatively up front, but the one thing I want to mention like up front about it is that it is so
Yes.
distracting to see character designs that almost are identical to a more iconic series of the same time. So like you just mentioned Full Metal Alchemist, and done by the same studio. Studio Bones did both this series and
Yes.
Full Metal Alchemist. But Kazuya is just dark haired Edward Elric. And it is so jarring that it's so distracting. Like, you never really, you know, that anime has, character designers and animators that function the same way. Essentially, they have iconic look. But it is so distracting in this series that I was surprised that it was so distracting that I saw it. It's like, oh, that's just Edward. And I was like, this came out in 2011. Brotherhood came out in
Yes.
2009. So I was like, oh, okay, Studio Bones. Okay, cool. And I never noticed that before with Studio Bones. So it's just like a weird thing to just call out at the front. But I just thought that was interesting to me that I was like paying attention to that specifically. Right.
Because you saw that, did it seem like it was laziness on their part, or it was more or less happenstance?
It does happen a lot in the industry that people can just copy and paste. So it feels almost intentional. Not intentional. I think you're right, Sam. It's probably a thing of laziness, but it's such a weird thing for, again, like we can only watch so much anime, but again, it's just something that caught my eye. So I don't really have any criticism of that. It's just like it was so
Okay.
noticeable that it distracted me from fully being
From the
immersed.
story.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that I guess that was the what I was trying to get at, because if you have this one thing, it's keeping you from engrossing yourself in the story and trying to appreciate what is being told to you, but you're like, oh, that's just Edward Elwick. It's like, why don't you just transmute and get out the situation,
So
because you can.
it's not even that. So I listened to the English dub as well. So it was like two layers of oddity to it. So this country, Seville, I think that's how they pronounce it.
Yes,
But
Saville.
yeah, it's a fictional country in Central Europe, basically where Scandinavia is, or Switzerland, and it's French speaking. So like, yeah, the main female lead is like, her name is like French derived, but they speak English without having any accent to French speaking country. And it's always so jarring when they do a dub in English that they don't really pay attention to the cultural relevance of language in their performance. So
Yeah.
that was that, and I think the main lead of the voice of Kazuka is his last name is Shipman. I forgot his first name, but he also voices Reki in the dub.
Oh, he does.
So it sounds like Kazuya for the series. He's a high schooler, but he sounds like he's 30. So that was the other thing. So he looked like Edward Elric, didn't sound like Edward Elric, and he also sounded 30. So two things that really took me out from enjoyment. But Sam,
Oh my goodness, you just had all kinds of
I
problems.
had it. I had it rough in this one. But yeah, tell me something good about this. Just not to say that it's
I
all
would say, like, because I had attempted, watching this anime once before. I didn't follow through, I guess because I was too distracted at the time, and watching it now, I'm kind of upset that I hadn't watched it before because this sort of thing is up my alley. And you are introduced to, when you're introduced to the characters and the story that unfolds. For instance, the older brother coming with a mystery, right? It's very much Sherlock Holmesy. Like she takes out a pipe that's not lit or anything. She just puts it in her mouth. It helps her think, as and just the way that excuse me, the way that she analyzes the situation that's given to her. She doesn't really have to move or anything, and it's just very interesting because it seems like they play around with the mysteries. They open you up to one mystery, and then with the subsequent episode that follows, there's another mystery that happens that seems totally unrelated, but then by the end of that mystery, you're sort of wrapped. You finish that mystery while solving an unknown tie that you didn't know that was there before, essentially tying three mysteries together, sort of like this overarching arc. And I really like how they do it. It was done in the first three episodes. It's done very, very well, and definitely does set you up for how they're going to approach mysteries and have it's also just funny seeing Kazuya interact with Victory. I keep having a problem with her name. I'm just gonna call her Victory. Victorique. There it is. I got it that time. And because she is she has a very uh interesting stance in the fact that, she is very astute, so she thinks very highly of herself. But then there are times when she's put into a situation that she hasn't been before, and she acts her age. Whereas all the other times, whenever she talks to Kazuya, it's as though it's an adult talking down to a kid. But then she's put into a situation where she actually acts like a kid, and you realize that there was some trauma that she has gone through, as so like that's sort of like an underlying mystery too that the show tries uh to grab you by, in the sense of trying to figure out what her past was, why she is the way that she is, in the sense of like, why is she in the library? Why don't you see her anywhere else except for places that Kazuya literally has to pull her out of, things like that. So I just really enjoyed it. But what were your thoughts? You said that you had a lot of things to talk about.
Oh, just I love that. I think we're just totally on opposite sides of the scale on this one. That
Okay.
anime does the mystery genre poorly is like an understatement. So this is like one of
Yes.
those pure mysteries where it's not really paired with another genre, where it's kind of the same field of most recently like the Millionaire Detective. Let's see, Monster. A couple years after this monster, huh? But anyways, yeah, so like mystery is done well when it's usually paired with another category. So like thinking about how anime usually approaches it is like supernatural sci-fi. We see that recently, like we both love Id Invaded. Psychopaths is
Yes.
like one of my top 10 anime of all time. Ghost in the Shell even does like the police procedural and like a sci-fi fantasy, no sci-fi world. So this is just pure mystery. So also Moriarty the Patriot tells another side of the Sherlock Holmes stories, and
True.
how Victorique, kind of like Mozambique Victorique, is that she is somewhat of the Sherlock Holmes, Poirot type. Poirot is the detective in Death on the Nile and Murder on the Oriental Express. That like she has the whole classic clay or ceramic smoking pipe that she puts in, and kind of like for the effect to appear smart, even though her character design is like even Kazuya calls her like a living doll in the first episode. But the things about like your criticism is that it's a well tied mystery. I was like, I don't know about that, because the first episode starts out with the whole locked room murder, and
Yes.
everyone knows the answer to that riddle, and it's really hard to do mysteries, especially nowadays, because the writers have to be smarter than the audience. That's how you sell a mystery. Same thing as with comedy writers have to be funnier than the average man. Same thing with horror. You have to know how to write horror. You have to understand what psychologically scares people. So what you said about them being interlocked mysteries is true, but they're not really interesting. You feel ahead of the story because her intelligence isn't really superior to the audience. So I was really taken out of it as like, oh, I know exactly how the maid did it. Spoiler alerts, but it's like, yes, we know mysteries. We know like all the classic Sherlock Holmes mysteries. We know, the poison was in the ice cube. I don't know if that's going to be in a future episode, but I'm definitely going to
Yeah.
roll my eyes if that's one of the mysteries. But yeah, the idea that the brother is the idiot detective that uses his more talented younger sister to solve crimes. She has like this whole, which I kind of thought might have been like a supernatural ability, because they go into her eye, and you guys kind of see the neurons connecting the story points of the mystery. So I thought she has like some all-seeing eye ability, but no, it's just her ability she calls it the fountain of wisdom, or the wellspring of wisdom in the English dub. And it's all not engaging for me particularly, because I love mystery so much. It's like I can predict how this is going to go. There was really no twists in these first episodes. So it's 24 episodes in total. So I feel like if we were doing expect or suspect, I feel very sus about what's going to be drawn out. So like you do have like somewhat of a narrative drive of like, why is she basically quote unquote locked up in this library? Why does her brother have to come visit her? Why can't she go out with permission? Why is Kazuya like kind of her caretaker? But all of that is like so under the surface of interesting. I couldn't really engage with this. So how do you feel about my criticism, Sam? Because I'm like, even as I say it, is like, I think I'm being overly harsh on it.
No, no. As you said, it's at least like with mysteries, it's very hard to do because, like you said, you have to be smarter than your audience. For instance, that was my first exposure to the locked room problem, right? So that's why I really appreciated it. Whereas, you've seen where you were exposed to that once before, so because you now know the turn, it's hard for you to get engaged, especially with all the other issues that you had jumping into the problem. You're like, oh, great. Now I know how the story's going to go. I'm not even really going to enjoy it right now. Right. So you're fighting an uphill battle at this time. I would also say, like, for instance, with Knives Out, right? Uh, the way that they do the mysteries in the beginning, it's very clear cut, and because of the turn that they do to make it halfway through the movie to make it more Columbo style in telling their story, it makes it more engaging. Whereas if they didn't add that turn, trying to take cues from, again, like I said, from Columbo or something like that, it would have fallen flat on its face rather than being engaging in how it tells its story. I would say, like, with the well, again with the mysteries, because in the first one they foreshadowed with the dog and the rabbits and things like that. So I was sort of interested. I appreciated that it was essentially again, just that foreshadowing, that it was trying to make it seem as though that they did take their time to try to connect those first few mysteries together. But I guess because no, well, it's not necessarily because it's fairly old, but I guess because of how they are telling the mysteries, it's more of a contemporary take, not necessarily trying to be or trying to add something different to it. So like I said, it's not doing what Knives Out did, where they sort of like tell a twist how they tell the story later on, but they do go for a more contemporary method of telling the mystery, which is why it would seem it's not very engaging to you, especially if they go over mysteries that you've already seen before. You already know what's happening, so I can see why you had such a hard time going into it. For me, I would say that it's more of like an expect, because again, I wasn't exposed to the locked room problem, so it seems as though that they're going to bring out more mysteries that I haven't really been exposed to yet. So I may be able to enjoy it more than you would moving forward, it seems.
Yeah,
Which is kind of sad because we, as you said, we both like mysteries with what you've mentioned earlier.
right. And it's based off a light novel series. So, like, I think what you said it hit home because it's just a mystery of the week. And if they do that for 24 episodes, I think it's going to be a solid series. And, like, if they delve a little bit more into Victorique's background and the brother's hair is so ridiculous. It seems like a joke.
The pompadour.
Or right, yeah. It seems like such a JoJo thing, but yeah. So the series is like 9 volumes. There's a follow up series to this, I think, called the Next Continent or the New Continent, and this
Oh.
is taking place. This is 1924. The series is taking place, so it's post World War II. Kazuya is Japanese, going to this kind of French speaking European country. So it's kind of has that set up to kind of in the same way that Night Raid 1931 was a setup to World War II. So I think that's probably going to
Yeah.
play an interest, especially if you think about the most recent Sherlock Holmes adaptation in Hollywood of Robert Downey Jr. doing the Book of Shadows and
Yes.
like Sherlock Holmes' involvement in World War II and Moriarty's. So I don't know if Gosick is going to go that direction. They're probably going to have a Moriarty type, that there's going to be a criminal consultant that goes against her. But yeah, she just carries these 3 episodes. Like, she's the most entertaining thing. Like her attitude, her tsundere personality, her intellect, her way of speaking is just like so A class. It's just everything around her is like so bland. I mean, even Kazuya is like milk toast, and looked at my notes and is like, oh yeah, I love that.
I love how that's in your actual notes. It's like Kazuya the milk
Yeah,
toast.
because like he's the bag boy, he's the companion, he's the audience insert. Like, he's the one that's supposed to be the normal one compared to the detective. He's the Dr. Watson to the Sherlock Holmes, and but he doesn't really add anything. He doesn't really have his own perspective or agency. Sure, he wants to bring honor to his family. That's kind of why he's at the school that he's at, but everything outside Victorique is just uninteresting to me. So I'm going to say that this deserves a reburied. But are you in the camp of it's a resurrect, Sam?
I would say yes, because the I went on to watch the next episode, and it seems as though, like I said, like they sort of cycle through mysteries, like sort of like a three at a time, interlocking, and do like a two-parter. So it's something that I really like. I liked how they did it, and I would definitely finish watching it. So this would be a resurrect and an expect from me.
All right, wonderful. I think the only thing that I would say also, like, oh yeah, you called this earlier about its gothic aesthetic, and that's where the name comes from. But we did talk about Occult Academy, and it feels
Yes.
like these two series, like I think in the first episode they say like this country is so obsessed with the occult, and oh, that's what the thing. They open up with like some gore, and I paused it. Goodness, is it going to be one of those series that opens up with like some obscene violence, and then it's all cute and pop about it? But yeah, Occult Academy is a good pairing with this series as well. And
It is.
yeah, Night Raid kind of also Moriarty the Patriot are kind of like in the same camp. So I would say like go check out those series as well as well, I would say go check out those series, not this series. So I'm digging it, patting it
Oh,
down. Yeah, I'm
really?
patting it down in the ground, and you're bringing it up back to life. But Sam, that wraps up our 10-year review of Gosick. I'm very interested to see what our next episode is going to be about, but I don't know. But wrapping up this episode, do you have anything to say?
Yes, we should take the fragments of chaos from this world and use the wellspring of wisdom within us to reconstruct them into the truth.